All right, so I know a lot of you out there listening are thinking about becoming tour guides. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're already guides and you want to just hone your skills.
Absolutely.
We're doing a deep dive today on some communication skills for tour guides.
Sounds good.
And we're going to be going over a snippet that we found from what seems like a pretty comprehensive guidebook
Yeah.
for tourist guides. And I'm really excited about this one because when I first saw the source material, I thought, ah,
Yeah.
this is kind of basic stuff. But as I was doing a little bit more research, uh, I saw that there's actually a lot of depth to these
Oh, for sure.
communication skills that they're bringing up.
Yeah, these are things that seem very basic on the surface, but when you really get down to it, there are so many subtle nuances.
Yeah. And so that's what we're going to try to tease out today in our deep dive is
Mm-hmm.
why are these skills so important?
Exactly.
And how can they really make or break a tourist's experience? So the first thing that the guidebook talks about is clear and concise speaking.
Right.
Um, Seems obvious, right?
Yeah, you would think so.
But I think it's easy to overlook.
Yeah,
When you
yeah.
think about it, your tourists are coming from all over the world, potentially.
Right, different languages, different cultural backgrounds. They might be tired, they might be jet lagged.
Right. Or they might be
Yeah.
like me. They just have a short attention span in general.
Right, exactly.
And so really being able to get your point across clearly and without a bunch of extra fluff, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as guides, we're so passionate about our subjects, and it's really easy to kind of go off on tangents or use a lot of jargon.
Right.
But we always have to remember that our audience may not be as familiar with the topic as we are.
I think the jargon thing is a really good point. Like,
Well,
say you're explaining some historical fact
yeah,
and you start throwing around all these terms that the average person isn't going to understand.
exactly. And then they're just lost. They spend the rest of the tour trying to figure out what you meant
Hmm.
instead of actually enjoying the experience.
So then how do you find that balance
Mm-hmm.
between like keeping things accurate, but also making it understandable for everyone?
Right. So it's definitely a balance. I think one really good technique is to use analogies.
Yeah.
Find something that's relatable to your audience, something that they can connect to, and use that to explain a more complex concept.
So like if you were trying to explain, I don't know, like a flying buttress in a cathedral,
Yeah.
instead of going into all of the architectural history,
Yeah.
you could say it's kind of like the scaffolding that holds up a building.
Exactly. Or like the bones in our body, they provide support and structure.
Right.
That makes it easier to understand.
I like that. And I think that ties into the cognitive load thing too, right?
Absolutely.
Like the simpler you can keep things, the less brain power people have to use to actually understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, their brains aren't overloaded with trying to process all this new information.
Right. And then they can actually enjoy the experience and remember it later on.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, we want our tourists to walk away with a newfound appreciation for the subject, not a headache.
For sure. So another key skill that the guidebook talks about is active listening,
Yes.
which again seems like one of those things that's pretty obvious. But I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of just delivering your spiel.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in what we want to say and forget to really listen to our audience.
Yeah, you've planned out this whole tour, you know it by heart,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just kind of going through the motions. But the problem is every group is different.
Exactly. Every single group is going to have different interests, different questions, different levels of knowledge.
Right. And so if you're not really paying attention to those things, you're going to miss out on opportunities to make the tour really special.
Yeah, active listening is all about making your tourists feel heard and valued.
So can you give an example of like what that would look like in practice?
Sure. So imagine a tourist asks you, "What's the oldest building in this city?"
Okay. Pretty basic question.
Seems simple, right? But with active listening, you might notice that they keep looking at a particular style of architecture. Or maybe they're mentioning something they read about a certain historical period.
Oh, so they might be hinting at a deeper interest.
Exactly. Maybe they're really interested in medieval architecture and not just the oldest building in general.
And so by actively listening, you could pick up on that and tailor your answer to fit their specific interest.
Right. Instead of just rattling off the name and date of the oldest building, you could talk about different architectural styles throughout history and how they evolved.
That's really cool. And I think that that personal touch is what makes a tour really memorable.
Absolutely. It's those little moments of connection that people remember long after the tour is over.
Totally. Now, the last skill that the guidebook highlights is nonverbal communication.
Ah, yes. This is a big one.
And I feel like this is especially important for tour guides because you're often dealing with people who might not speak the same language as you.
That's right. You're communicating with people from all over the world, so even if you don't speak their language, your body language can still convey a lot of information.
And it's not just about getting the information across, it's also about creating a certain atmosphere.
Right. You want to create a welcoming and engaging environment.
Exactly. So like if you're standing there slouched over, not making eye contact.
Yeah, you're going to come across as bored or disinterested even if you're saying the most fascinating things.
Right. It's like the words are saying one thing, but your body is saying something completely different.
Exactly, and people pick up on that subconsciously.
So what are some examples of positive nonverbal cues that guides can use?
Well, eye contact is a big one. Making eye contact with your tourists shows that you're engaged with them and that you care about what they're thinking.
Right.
And then facial expressions, obviously, a genuine smile can go a long way. It shows that you're enthusiastic about what you're talking about.
I feel like some people had trouble with that. Like I'm not a naturally smiley person,
Yeah, it takes practice.
but it's definitely something that you can work on.
Absolutely. And then hand gestures can also be really effective. Using open hand gestures can make you seem more approachable and welcoming,
Right.
as opposed to like crossing your arms, which can make you seem closed off.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and even your posture, standing up straight and projecting your voice, shows confidence and authority,
Right.
which can be really important when you're leading a group of people.
There's actually research on this whole like nonverbal communication thing, right?
Oh yeah, tons of research.
Something about like we unconsciously mirror the emotions of the people around us.
It's called emotional contagion.
Right.
And it's basically the idea that our emotions are contagious. We tend to pick up on the emotions of the people around us.
So like if you as the tour guide are really excited about what you're talking about,
Yeah,
your tourists are more likely to be excited about it too.
exactly. Your enthusiasm can be infectious, and that can make all the difference in the world.
It's not just what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. And so to kind of sum everything up, we've got these 3 core communication skills that the guidebook talks about. Clear and concise speaking,
Yes,
active listening,
right.
and engaging nonverbal communication.
Absolutely.
And they all seem pretty straightforward on the surface, but as we've been talking about, I think there's a lot more nuance to them
Oh, yeah, for sure.
than you might initially realize.
It's like the tip of the iceberg. You know, you see this small thing, but underneath there's this huge mass that you don't see.
Right, and I think that's what makes these skills so important because they can really make or break a tour.
Absolutely. They're the foundation of a great tour guide.
For sure, and I was thinking about this as we were prepping for this deep dive.
Yeah.
These skills aren't just important for tour guides.
Oh, absolutely not.
Like think about your everyday life.
Yeah.
How many times have you had a misunderstanding with someone because you weren't communicating clearly?
Or because you weren't really listening to what they were saying.
Right, exactly. Or because you were sending mixed messages with your body language.
It happens all the time.
So I think the takeaway here is that these communication skills are really valuable in all aspects of our lives.
Absolutely. Whether you're a tour guide, a teacher, a parent, a friend, these skills are essential for building strong relationships and creating positive interactions.
So I think the question that I'll leave our listeners with today is how can you apply these skills in your own life?
That's a good one.
What are some small changes that you can make to become a more effective communicator?
Food for thought.
For sure. All right, that's going to wrap it up for our deep dive today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll catch you on the next one.
Yes, that's
All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into something I find really, really interesting,
okay.
and that's the world of tourist guides.
Oh, cool.
And we've got all this great research and articles about it. And,
Yeah.
I think what fascinates me is like the skills involved in handling groups,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that kind of translates into so many other things.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just like leading tours.
Yeah, no matter what you're doing, if you're
Yeah.
at work, if you're with your family, if you're just trying to get a group of friends together to go do something,
Right?
those skills
It's useful.
are really valuable.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So the first thing that jumped out at me from the research was this whole concept of crowd control.
Uh-huh.
And I thought,
Sounds a little.
well, that sounds a
Yeah,
little
it's not-
intense, right? Like you need a security team.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it's a little more nuanced than that.
It is. Yeah, it's a lot more nuanced. I mean,
Right.
think about it. If you're in a crowded museum and you're leading a group of people
Yeah.
and somebody gets separated, I mean, panic can set in,
Oh, totally.
but a good guide knows to establish like a visual point
Right.
early on. So
Right.
maybe there's a really distinctive statue or something or a sign,
Right.
and they tell everyone if we get separated, meet back at the statue in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And just something simple like that.
That's a great point.
But effective.
Yeah, it's like you're sort of preemptively
Yeah.
diffusing a problem
Absolutely.
before it happens.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are other techniques too, like using a call and response.
Okay.
Some specific phrase or a whistle
Right.
that can cut through the noise and help you gather everyone quickly.
Right.
Which is also
Is-
something you can use in other situations as well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, okay, you've got your crowd moving along smoothly.
Right.
But then there's this other aspect that came up that's called attention to diverse needs.
Right.
Which seems like a whole other level of complexity.
Absolutely.
Because not everybody in a group is going to have the same interests or background.
Not at all. And that's where cultural sensitivity becomes so important.
Okay.
I mean, for example, if you're a guide in a location that's really historically significant,
Right.
you need to be mindful of how different cultures might perceive certain events
Oh, that's a good point.
or figures.
Right.
So they might adjust their language a bit, provide a little bit of additional context,
Yeah.
depending on who's in their group.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I've always wondered this, like, how do guides gauge a group's knowledge level, on the fly?
Right.
Do they just sort of like wing it?
Well, some of it is intuition.
Yeah.
But there are some techniques, too,
Yeah.
like asking open-ended questions early on.
Mhm.
So, like, what are you most excited to see today?
Oh, okay.
Or have you visited a similar site before?
Oh, I see.
So that helps them understand the group's interest and what their prior knowledge is.
Right. So it's kind of like tailoring a presentation based on your audience.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't give the same talk to a group of experts as you would to beginners.
Precisely, yeah. And adapting on the fly is really crucial.
Right.
Maybe someone asks a question that shows they're really interested in a specific thing.
Right.
Then a good guide can seize that opportunity to offer additional insights
Yeah.
and really enrich the experience for everyone.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is making me realize that
Yeah.
I've probably been in groups that were like really, really well led.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't even realize it.
Right.
Because everything just felt so smooth.
Exactly.
It's only when it's bad that you notice it, right?
That's true.
But there's one more skill that was mentioned in the research that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
And that's this whole idea of group coordination.
Yeah.
Which I think sort of encompasses like everything from logistics to safety.
It does. A successful tour isn't just about conveying information.
Right.
It's about creating a seamless and an enjoyable experience for everyone.
Right.
And that means having a clear itinerary.
Okay.
Accounting for things like bathroom breaks, accessibility needs, knowing what to do in case of an emergency, all of that.
So many things to think about.
It is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips for people who might be, like in charge of planning a family trip or something like that?
Absolutely. I mean, a simple one is just gather emergency contact information for everyone in the group.
Right.
That's just basic, but important.
It is.
Another one is to think about weather contingencies.
Oh, yeah.
So what if it rains?
Yeah.
Do you have a backup plan?
Yeah, good point.
And always be mindful of individual needs.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have dietary restrictions?
Okay.
Do you need to accommodate someone with mobility challenges?
Oh, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
But that's really important.
It is.
And, it's not just about avoiding problems.
Right.
It's about maximizing enjoyment, too.
Cool.
Like, let's say, someone in your group is really into photography.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you build in some extra time at, like, the scenic spots.
Absolutely.
So they can really, get some good shots.
Exactly. I mean, thinking ahead, anticipating potential issues, and being adaptable makes a huge difference.
It really does.
And you're right. This applies to any group setting, not just tourism.
Totally. So wrapping up this deep dive today, we've learned that the skills of a great tourist guide, there's crowd control, attention to diverse needs, and group coordination are incredibly valuable for anyone, really.
They are.
It's about more than just keeping people together.
Right.
It's about creating a positive and rewarding experience.
Absolutely.
For everyone.
Yeah, it really is. And, here's something to consider.
Okay.
How can you apply these principles in your own life?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. I mean, whether you're leading a team at work or just planning a simple gathering with friends.
Yeah.
Being mindful of these skills can really elevate the experience for everyone.
That's great advice. I love it.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great deep dive.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Me too.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so today we're diving into a topic that's all about thinking on your feet and handling the unexpected.
Sounds exciting.
It is. We're going to be looking at the world of tourist guides.
Ah, fascinating. A job where no 2 days are the same, huh?
Exactly. And our focus is adaptability. You know how crucial it is for guides to be adaptable?
Oh, absolutely. Dealing with last-minute changes, different personalities in the group.
Right. I mean, imagine you've planned this whole itinerary and then, bam,
Yeah.
a sudden downpour.
Or a road closure. Or maybe someone in the group just decides they're more interested in a local craft shop than the historical landmark you had planned.
Yeah. And our deep dive today uses some really interesting sources that get into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to be a truly adaptable guide. Like, how do they deal with those curveballs and still manage to create a memorable experience?
Well, one thing that really stands out in the research is this idea of adjusting the tour.
Oh, yeah, that's way more than just pulling out an umbrella when it rains.
Yes. Right. It's about reading the room, picking up on those subtle cues from your group. Are they fascinated by something you hadn't planned on? Maybe a particular street performer or a local artisan they spot along the way?
Okay, so let's say I'm a guide and I'm leading a group through a bustling marketplace, and everyone seems to be ignoring my carefully prepared historical facts. But then they all get captivated by, I don't know, maybe a spice vendor with this incredible display.
Oh, that's a great example. And a skilled guide would seize that opportunity. You know, instead of sticking rigidly to the plan, they might use that spice vendor as a way to talk about the history of the region's cuisine.
Oh, I see. So you weave it into the narrative.
Exactly, or even discuss the medicinal properties of different spices.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you've transformed a potential distraction into this engaging sensory experience.
That's brilliant. It's like you're turning lemons into lemonade.
Precisely. But of course, sometimes the unexpected is a bit more disruptive.
You know, like a major road closure, or maybe, like you said, even an unexpected flock of sheep blocking the path, something that totally throws off your schedule.
Right. And that's where having backup plans becomes essential, and also a clear decision-making process.
Ooh, tell me more about that. A decision-making process.
Well, think of it like this. First, you assess the situation. How serious is the disruption? What are the immediate needs of my group? Are they safe? Do they need anything? Then you consider your options. Is there an alternative route? Can you substitute a different activity? And finally, and this is crucial, communicate clearly with your group. Keep them informed, reassured, and engaged throughout the process.
Communication is key. I bet that can make all the difference in how the group perceives the disruption.
Absolutely. Because a skilled guide can actually reframe the situation, turn what might seem like a negative into a positive, maybe even an adventure.
So we've got adjusting the tour based on the group's vibe, and then being prepared to handle those major hiccups. But what about those more subtle ways of adapting to different groups? Like, how do you even begin to read the dynamics of a group and adjust your style accordingly?
It's almost like being a chameleon. You need to blend in, be sensitive to the energy, the pace, the interests of each group. Are they high energy? Do they want to go, go, go? Or are they more relaxed, maybe prefer to take their time soaking things in?
Right. Some groups want every single detail, and others are happy just to wander and experience things more organically.
Exactly. And a good guide can sense that, you know. They know when to provide those in-depth explanations and when to just let the experience speak for itself.
It's almost like intuition, isn't it? Knowing how to tailor your approach to each unique group.
It is, and that's what makes a tour truly special, when the guide creates that sense of flow and connection, so everyone feels included and engaged.
Okay, so to sum it up, we've talked about two main things. One, adjusting the tour based on, well, like we said, the group's energy and interests. And two, having the skills and the mindset to handle those unexpected curveballs.
And as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a thought. How can you apply these principles of adaptability to your own life?
That's a good question.
Because think about it. We all face challenges at work, in our personal lives, even just navigating everyday situations. And having that ability to assess, consider options, and communicate effectively can be a game changer.
It's like having a secret weapon.
Exactly. So the next time you're faced with an unexpected change of plans, remember those tourist guides. Think about how they turn challenges into opportunities.
Food for thought. And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We are ready to jump into another deep dive. And you guys know how this works by now, right? You send in your requests and we tackle them.
That's right. And today's deep dive is coming straight from listener suggestions.
We're talking about cultural sensitivity in tourism.
Yeah. You always hear, be respectful and do your research.
But we wanted to get a little more in depth.
Exactly. So we're going to dig into these ideas using the articles and travel blogs that you all sent our way.
So flipping through all of these listener suggestions,
Yeah.
two major themes really jump out.
Respect for diversity.
Right. And
Sensitivity to local customs.
sensitivity to local customs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
And these are so important because
yeah.
they can really make or break your experience as a tourist.
Okay, so first up, respect for diversity.
Okay.
Seems simple enough, right? Be respectful of other cultures.
Right.
But I think it goes way deeper than that.
It absolutely does.
You know?
Because
It's not just about being polite.
Right.
It's about realizing that what's considered normal
yeah.
here
Mm-hmm.
can be totally different somewhere else.
For sure. One of the articles you shared
Yeah.
talks about the idea of personal space
Oh, yeah.
and how that can vary wildly.
Yeah.
Like from culture to culture.
Yeah, because like in some places,
Mm-hmm.
standing close to someone is like,
It shows warmth, right?
yeah, it's friendly. It's like welcoming, but
But in other places that can feel.
intrusive.
Yeah.
Like, get out of my bubble.
Exactly.
It's so interesting. And then there's also like communication styles.
Oh.
Being direct.
Yeah.
Is that seen as honest and straightforward in some cultures?
Totally. Yeah.
But then in others, it's considered rude.
Totally.
Like I remember I was visiting a friend
Okay.
in Japan, and we were having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept like subtly backing away during the conversation.
Okay.
And I thought I was being polite, like giving him space.
Yeah.
You know? But afterward, he was like, you seemed really uncomfortable.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Because like, I was like,
Yeah. Interesting.
like sending this signal of like, get away from me.
Oh, God.
Totally misread the situation.
That's a great example of like those unspoken rules that we don't even realize
Yes,
could
sir.
totally trip us up when we're traveling.
So then that brings us to
Sensitivity to local customs.
sensitivity to local customs.
This is where I think that pre-trip research
yeah.
really comes in handy.
Yeah, it's like the more you know, the better.
Exactly. And we're talking everything from dress codes
Mhm.
to dining etiquette to gestures.
Yeah. Things you would never even think about.
You would never think about it.
It's just totally different.
I remember reading somewhere that
Yeah.
in some Middle Eastern countries, it's considered offensive to show the soles of your feet.
Oh.
So like crossing your legs.
Something we do without even thinking.
Exactly. Without even thinking.
Hmm.
But in that context, it can be a really big deal.
It's so true.
And what's so fascinating is that a lot of these customs
Mhm.
are rooted in these really deep cultural and religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And I think that,
Like, for example,
yeah,
pointing with your index finger.
right.
Like, in some cultures, that's considered super disrespectful.
Absolutely. Even aggressive, right?
Yeah.
But knowing that
Mhm.
helps us to not just memorize a
Right.
bunch of do's and don'ts,
Yeah.
but to understand like
Yeah, the why behind it.
the why behind it exactly. And I think that's what really helps us to
Yeah.
appreciate other cultures.
Right. So it becomes less about just like
Uh.
not screwing up
Exactly.
and more about like connecting with people
yes.
And
On a
like-
deeper level.
on a deeper level.
Right.
Yeah.
Like recognizing that their way of doing things is just as valid as ours, even if it's different.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the magic of travel lies.
Yeah.
You know, it's in those moments of genuine connection
Totally.
when we're outside of our comfort zones
For sure.
and embracing all of the
Yeah.
amazing,
Richness.
the richness of human diversity. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, so just to recap real quick,
Okay.
respect for diversity means understanding that different cultures have different norms.
Yes.
And sensitivity to local customs means taking the time to learn and appreciate those customs.
Beautifully said. And here's something for all of you to think about.
Mhm.
How can we take these principles that we've
Yeah.
been talking about
Mhm.
and apply them not just to our travels, but
Right.
to our everyday lives?
Because we encounter diverse perspectives
All the time.
all the time.
Right here at home. Right here at home. In our communities.
Yeah.
In our workplaces.
All the time.
Food for thought.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dive in.
Great. So today we're looking at, well, it's kind of funny, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, we're looking at training materials, like a guide, I guess, for tour guides.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. And, when you think tour guide, you think of someone, like at a historical landmark, just kind of droning on about dates and kings and queens.
Yeah, you're right. I
But
don't
this
know.
is different. It's all about how to make history come alive. They call it narrative skill.
Makes sense, right. It's not enough to just know the facts. You got to know how to tell the story.
Exactly. And that's what makes a tour memorable, right? When you
Yeah.
feel like you've been transported back in time, not just listening to a lecture.
Absolutely. It's like, think about it, the hero's journey, that classic storytelling structure.
Yeah.
A good tour guide can use that for historical figures, like hear their struggles, their victories, how they changed the world. Suddenly, you're not just learning about some king, you're on this journey with them.
That's so cool. So it's like taking a dry historical fact and turning it into something, relatable.
Exactly. And this guide, it actually talks about specific storytelling techniques, like using humor, suspense, even vivid imagery.
Great humor, suspense. That sounds more like directing a movie than giving a tour.
Uh-huh, right. But it works. Imagine, right? You're learning about King Charles II and how he hid in an oak tree after a battle. Now, the guide could just say that. Or
War.
they could say something like, he must have been really good at hide and seek, wouldn't you say?
Haha, I see what you mean. Suddenly, it's not just a fact, it's a funny story.
Exactly. And those are the things people remember. Okay, now think about suspense. You're in, say, a medieval castle, right?
Okay, got it.
And the guide takes you down this dark corridor and whispers, legend says there's a secret passage hidden in these walls. Now, you're not just looking at old stones. You're wondering, is there really a secret passage? Where does it lead? It adds this whole other layer to the experience.
Okay, you got me. I'd be totally hooked.
Yeah. Right. And then there's a vivid imagery. Think about ancient Rome.
Okay.
The guide could just point and say, this was the marketplace. Or they could say, imagine the crowds here, merchants shouting, the smell of fresh bread and spices.
Wow, yeah, suddenly you're not just looking at ruins, you're practically there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about painting a picture with words.
It's amazing how these techniques can completely change the way you experience a place. But there's another really important point this guide makes. It's about active engagement. Like, it's not just on the tour guide to perform, right? We, the tourists, have to participate too.
You got it. It's not a one-way street. A good guide uses questions to get you thinking, to share your own thoughts. They might ask, what surprised you most about this place? Or, if you could go back in time, what would you ask the people who lived here?
Oh, that's good. It makes you think, and it makes the experience more personal.
Right. And those questions can be adapted, to different groups. Like for families with kids, the guide might ask, what games do you think children played here back then? It gets everyone involved, thinking from different perspectives.
So it's really a combination of great storytelling and engaging the audience.
Absolutely. It's not just what it's how you share it and get others involved.
It's almost like creating a live, interactive documentary.
I like that. And, thinking about this, it makes me realize we're all storytellers in a way, right?
That's true.
So maybe next time you're on a tour, or even just sharing a story with friends, think about these techniques.
Yeah, how can you bring that story to life and really get people engaged? Who knows? It might change the way you see the world or even the way you connect with others.
You never know.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive.
Until next time.
See you then.